social media and just being unkind online have really made our world a much more unkind environment.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Well, good morning. My name is Stephen Gilbreth, and I am currently the principal of St. Peter's Middle School, McAuley Catholic High School. I retired 2 years ago from public education, and I was a school administrator and an assistant superintendent and a teacher for 28 years in public education. I taught English, and most of my time was spent as an administrator, and mostly 20 years as a principal, a middle school principal and a high school principal. And I've seen lots of things come and go over the last 30 years in education. And this morning I'm talking with Donna, who is a former teacher, a retired teacher. And so, Donna, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you taught and how you did that?
All right, I'm Donna Birdsong. My husband and I both taught at a little school in Quapaw, Oklahoma. I taught third grade for 25 years. My husband was teaching business subjects for 30 years. The subject today, I think, is going to be about bullying and things like that. And as I look back on my years teaching, when I retired, there was had been one school shooting, and then things have exploded since then. But the biggest problems I had would be maybe just little fights or something like that. But I enjoyed teaching. I thought third grade was the perfect age to teach. The children still love you, but they're eager to learn too. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think, as I look back, you're absolutely correct. I think when I first started in education, I remember as a classroom teacher, it was middle school. And the problems that we had back then were kids speaking out of turn or not raising their hand, or sometimes they would be disruptive. But I think over time things have gotten increasingly more difficult in the classroom. And I think, Donna, you mentioned that there had only been one school shooting that you had experienced in your time, and I would echo that. And I lived through a school shooting in my school, and so I have some firsthand knowledge about that and thinking about that. And as I look back, I think the dangers in school that have come about recently, and the increase of bullying, I believe, and it's my own personal opinion, that phones, social media, and in 2007, the iPhone or the smartphone was introduced, and kids could reach out to one another in isolation, if you would. In other words, they could give somebody a hard time from their bedroom and not have to do face to face. As you probably remember, if two young men got into it on the playground, they went outside and settled it, and it was over. Or two girls can hold a grudge, I'm sure, even in third grade, a little longer than boys. And that's probably been your experience as well, correct?
Right. In fact, that was one of the subjects I was going to bring up, was cell phones, because when I retired, I finally got a cell phone. They weren't even around much in 2002. Now every child has one. And I'm wondering what you think about them in the classroom.
Yeah, I think obviously the notion of kids being able to Google something or to search something and to find information readily available at their fingertips, that's fantastic. But the other part of that, I think the danger that brings about is it, and especially with girls have a tendency to compare themselves to one another. And if somebody is being inappropriate or disrespectful online and cyberbullying, Did you see the dress that Michelle had on today? Or did I can't believe you did this or did that? And are so kids are their own worst enemy in terms of taking things personally and then ganging up, and that becomes, and I think just with that it becomes even more of a problem. And it's that notion, I think, of it's so easy for somebody to give somebody a hard time on a cell phone, or to reach out. And then there also becomes that thing of isolation, and COVID certainly didn't help. There
Right,
was that isolation of being at home and all by yourself. And I think, that's probably the dangers, and that being cyberbullying taking place on the phones. And the difference from, as you said, when we first started, there weren't those problems, and boys often settled their differences on the playground or after school, behind the school.
right.
And girls might have a spat, if you will, and eventually work it out or not, or may carry that grudge with them for life. But
Right. Little girls get their feelings hurt, or girls, period, get their feelings hurt. They're very emotional, and they can keep nitpicking at it. They don't let it go. The boys can go out and slug it out, and they're through with it. Then they can be best friends the next day. But
yeah,
it doesn't happen. I have a funny story. I called our son, one of our sons yesterday, and asked him about bullying and things like that when he was in school, and he graduated in 1983. But he had a junior high principal that had a theory, and back then paddles were allowed, spanking was allowed.
yeah,
And Russell, our son, said, we didn't have any of that because the principal said, the person that throws the first punch is going to get 3 licks. The person that throws the second punch is going to get 2 licks. But all the kids around them that are egging it on, they're getting 5 licks. So, so that settled it. Sometimes kids like to egg it on, but
yeah.
they couldn't do that with this principal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? That Donna, that is a great story. That is absolutely the way I see that. And I think one thing that has escalated this problem over the years is with kids having cell phones with them. Two boys may get into a scrap, but typically, and especially in high school, I was a high school principal and still am. Not so much at private schools, but at public schools, if there's going to be a fight, it's announced, and there'll be 4 or 5. As you said, the principal would give those kids who stood around and egged it on 5 licks. The problem now is many kids will go into the bathroom and film the fight, and then they'll put it out on social media. And so
Yeah,
that's out there for the world to see. And very often those kinds of things go viral. And I think it really does just increase, that being a problem, and makes it so much worse. And then other kids want to copycat that. So I think that social media and the use of phones and posting things and just being unkind online have really made our world a much more unkind environment, if you will. And I think it used to be that when kids would felt like they were bullied, a lot of times they would tell the classroom teacher, and the
right.
teacher would say, "Hey, I'll either deal with it, and if it doesn't stop, we'll send this to the principal. And if that doesn't stop, then we'll call the parents in and sit down and we'll work this out." And I think that with like I said, this notion of having social media and I don't know, it seems to me like the world has become, I don't know, a little more divisive, and especially in the last several years, there seems to be so much angst among people in general, and I think that comes from home and then filters its way into school.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think a lot of times people will ask, well, what happens if a principal doesn't take care of it? Or what happens if this problem becomes, even more pervasive and it becomes more problematic? How does one deal with that if it's not being dealt with? And, very often, I've never known too many administrators that are looking for problems. They try to deal with it. And very often, as you well know, Donna, if two kids start bullying one another, it's not going to stop unless they both stop. And now if it's the kind of problem where it's one-sided, well, then that's certainly a different kind of problem. But if other kids jump in it and they aren't going to let it go and aren't going to let it go, then, as you well know, it becomes more widespread and becomes more difficult to isolate the problem and then solve the problem, because too many kids get involved in the problem and they don't let it go. I used to joke with, not joke, but talk to my assistant principals and different principals over the years. It's like, and I would tell kids that would be in trouble in the office, um, there are very few people who actually want to go out and have a fist fight, but there are lots and lots of people that want to stand around and watch one. So, that becomes a problem in and of itself, just like you said, kids egging that on.
Uh-huh. Well, let me see about some of these questions I have here for you. We've talked about how dangers have changed over time. And I think this cell phone is a big problem there. Things that the children see on TV too, and hear their parents talking about. Even the political environment is causing a lot of problems because the candidates are not necessarily nice to each other,
Yeah.
and so they hear a lot, and then the children take sides and even can argue about that. But one of the questions was, what should one do if bullying is reported to an administrator and it is ignored? Now, I don't think you would be one that would ignore it, but some
Yeah.
just don't know how to handle it, and they hope it'll just go away, and it doesn't usually.
Right. Right.
And then the parents can get involved. The two cases of bullying I saw when I was teaching was a parent went into my other third grade teacher's room, and there was a paddle on her desk, and the parent picked it up and threatened to beat the teacher with it. The next day, the principal put their child into my classroom. he had his own problems.
Another thing that I always, as an administrator, I always kept in mind that, obviously it's been said over the years that parents are sending the very best that they have. And they want a safe environment for their kids,
Right,
and they want to know that their kids are being well educated in a safe environment. And, a lot of times administrators that don't have a lot of experience, things they may make a decision that's not the best decision, or but that's kind of a growth process. And I've always found that, if I made a mistake as an administrator, the one thing that very often fixed it, when I would be in a meeting with a parent, if we would get to the bottom of it, it was like, well, that was the problem, I would say, I'm sorry. If I've made a mistake, I'm certainly sorry here. And I know that we're not arguing over a used car deal gone wrong. We're talking about your child, and I want to, I want to hear this out and do my very best. And if I do need to change, I can change. And very often that's how, the very best teachers over the years that I have known have had that exact mindset. It's like, if I've made a mistake with a child, I'm going to try to rectify that and do better. And it's just like you probably very well know, if little problems happen, you just move the kids apart from one another in the classroom, and if not, then you start, you may get to the place where you're taking some privileges away, or
right.
try to deal with things
Uh-huh.
in a simple, as simple as possible, but and keep the continuity of the classroom intact, if you will.
Right. Uh, Let me see what else here. Well, I think you've covered about how does one prevent escalation.
Yeah.
Uh, Well, a lot of times it'll start out as verbal bullying and then it can advance to physical. And we
Yeah,
want to try to get it stopped before it goes on into that.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know that there's nothing worse than than letting, especially a bullying thing, escalate into a fight. And you know, I think, and as you said, years ago, you'd only heard of one school shooting, and when I first got into education, it was somewhat of an unheard of thing. But now I think it has escalated to the point that, you know, there are a lot of things, and I think probably one thing, you know, you'll do a lot. I've done a lot of research on what causes school shootings and mass shootings and that kind of school violence, and there used to be a study about violent video games, you know, that sort of creates problems with kids. And you know, I mean, I think that perhaps there is some truth to that. I think probably, to me, um, you know, I feel like kids feel with I think it's a complex issue, you know, and I think with cell phones and cyberbullying and people feeling isolated and you know, not feeling like they have a great group of friends, and I think that mental illness, you know, has become quite a thing, and the recognition of that. And so I think it's a combination of things, you know, that kids have learned violent behavior. You know, in schools we always do lockdown drills and how will we keep the school
Uh-huh.
safe, and you know, it's just like in Texas, that the door was propped open or whatever happened, you know, those kinds of things are so vital to make sure that, you know, we take every measure that we can, that doors aren't left open or propped
Yeah.
open, or you know, because that just invites somebody, the availability of the school. And you know, I think
I
it makes
remember
it. Go ahead.
right after that shooting, before long, we were having drills, and there was a code that would go out, active shooter or something like that. The doors to the classroom had to be kept locked, especially with something like that. Only one door was available to be coming in the
Yes.
school, the front door.
Yes.
They had to pass by the principal's office.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess schools are still doing those lockdown drills, are they?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I know that has become, you know, with the introduction of SROs, or the resource officers, like sometimes a school district will partner with the police department, the
Uh-huh.
local police department, or hire security, um, to do that, and then they go through a series of drills and making sure that classrooms are locked. And you know, there's a lot of a lot of different things over the years. Do I keep my classroom lights turned on? Do I turn the lights off? You know, and as long as you keep kids away from the doorway, get to the opposite side and on the same side of the wall, so you prevent somebody from, if they look in, typically they say that an active shooter is looking for the closest place to, you know, to create harm. And so if you can avoid that at every cost, and that is making sure that doors are locked, and then teachers practice those safe drills. Some police departments will say keep the lights on because we want to know friend or foe when we come into the classroom. You know, and it's very frightening to think about when things escalate to that point. But the world we live in has kind of gotten crazy, and I think that, yeah, preparation is so much, you know, being prepared is so much better than not being prepared, obviously, but that the mindset of what can happen, and so what measures should we take to avoid any kind of a tragic event.
No, there's a big debate and controversy about gun control, but it seems like to me that no regular person would need an AR-15, those assault guns. If those, and how young people could get hold of those, I don't understand, because they're not, nobody's going hunting deer with a AR-15. I mean, I
Right.
believe in having people having guns, for sport and things like that, but not those type of guns.
Yeah.
I,
I think you're absolutely right, Donna. I think that that whole notion of having the availability of those kinds of assault rifles that are automatic or semi-automatic, they just make that kind of egregious act um, more easily accomplished. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't know, I don't have all the answers on gun control
who does, right?
and all of that, but I do think that limiting the availability of those kinds of things, and there are laws out there, registering to buy a gun, but there are so many guns on the streets now, and it's such a difficult thing to manage. I think that, though, there does certainly need to be um, very profound thought given to these assault rifles and these
Right.
things, that anything that can make a gun more dangerous. I think, there's a notion of arming teachers, and people will say, well, I think it's a good idea to make sure that you have a couple teachers in the building that would be available and be having a weapon. I have to tell you, I disagree with that. I think you're setting people up for an even more dangerous environment, and to put that on somebody, a teacher or an administrator, I think and there's a lot of schools of thoughts on that, but I think that leaving that kind of thing into the hands of the police and,
Teacher
is
having to be armed or something, that's taking away what we need to be doing. We're supposed to be teaching. And when you have that much, those things, and a child just keeps irritating you, you could lose your temper or something, and you don't want to do
absolutely,
something like that.
absolutely.
We're trying to, it gets to be there's so many outside things that we have to do in the classroom that it takes away our time to teach math, reading, science, all of that.
Yeah,
And
you're absolutely right, Donna. That's a great point. I think that over the years, um, schools have been asked to do so much more than they
yes,
have done over dealing with mental illness and those kinds of things. And we aren't the experts in that. I mean, certainly we do. I truly have never known a teacher that doesn't just love every child that they have. Some are rascals, and you
you're
might
right, but we still love them.
absolutely still love a child and still want to make the greatest difference in that child's life.
Right.
um, but when kids come to school with those kinds of problems, truly
Right.
educators need help and need outside help that
You
can
know,
make that
we,
easier.
we talked about mental illness, and we now have a problem with drugs that can bring. I think that's a lot of the cause of mental illness, but I don't know. Do you have to work with that somehow? Have students come to school stoned or on drugs or something?
Yeah. I think, and there again, that's kind of a disciplinary issue. If a student comes to school and they've been using an illicit drug, or then obviously they're going to be suspended from school, and the juvenile authorities will be involved in their life. But you're right that I think drugs and alcohol have exacerbated in many places, in many instances, for kids, and it seems to be more available or more accepted in society today um, than it was in the past. And so the availability of that has obviously just made it difficult to for
Sometimes it's
educators.
from the parents. I had a student one time that could not stay awake in class. He fell asleep in class. And we had a couple of resource officers come in that had worked with the family, and they said that his father was a sniffer and he was up all night. Well, the boy was up all night too, and that rubs off on the student where they can't learn when they've got that situation in their home.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's see,
Yeah, that's a great point that you made there. I think that families, you talk about the nuclear family that used to be mom and dad in the home, and now there's so many single parents, single moms that are they have to raise their kids and go to work and do all of those things, and many times it makes it, just all of those little things have added up to make the whole educational environment more difficult, and
uh-huh,
it's yeah, a lot of times there's not great answers to, how do we deal with this, and you know, how do we help families in any way we can and get them the resources that they need. But just like you said, if there's a dad that's abusing some kind of substance, that the kids see that, and of course they come to school and that's all they know, and they live in that kind of environment, and so their thought is not on getting a great education.
uh-huh,
It's somewhere else, and that has just made it so much more difficult for educators.
uh-huh.
I think talking about the school shootings, we've kind of talked about that, and it's such a complex thing. And why has it grown? There's so many schools of thoughts out there about that, and I think just I wish that we could. I think if we could get kids to go home from school. I know when I was a kid, I grew up with a horse, and we lived kind of outside of the city limits and built forts and ran through the woods. And I'd ride my horse and a member of a saddle club, and we had so much fun, doing
Right,
things like that. I think if kids got outside and built forts and had all kinds of activities that they did that it would
right.
I feel like not to I do think that is something that we miss today, that kids spend so much time either playing video games or spend time on their phones. They need to put them down and go outside and play.
It's not, I guess, worried about it's not as safe anymore outside as it used to be. When I was growing up, I could ride my bike all over town, and I was in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that a fairly good sized town, but didn't have to worry. My parents didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
Uh, Now today it's not quite like that. There's what do you think? Maybe where I used to teach Pawpaw, I saw on Facebook that now they're giving all students, not just those on Medicaid or welfare, all students free meals, 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. So
Yeah.
that's going to help them. Now, there's some places that have, since children can't get out and play so much safely, and their parents are still working. What do you think about after school programs? I
Oh,
had
absolutely. Yeah.
okay,
I think that's a great idea. I think after school programs are fantastic, and many schools offer those, and
uh-huh,
have outside curriculum that organize sports and
right,
gaming
uh-huh,
and different things, and snacks after school. There are those, the breakfast and lunch, and then snacks after school that kind of keep kids engaged, and
uh-huh,
um, and something productive to do while parents are still at work, and can they come by to get them? And so I think that after school care is, I think it's wonderful. There again, it's something else that, educators are asked to do. Um, but we live in a world where that seems like the thing to do. And if it is, I've never known an educator that doesn't have a big heart and want to do what they can to make a child's life better. And, I think that's what I tell kids every day. You'll never, ever regret giving it everything you've got, and no matter what you do, and you'll never regret being kind. And I think if the world, would remember that kind of thing,
uh-huh.
do the very best you can in everything you do, and show kindness no matter where you go. I think our world would be so much, better off, if you will.
Sure would, right. Would you think the teachers would take care of the after-school program? And
Yeah,
now,
absolutely. Yeah,
what if there was a
absolutely.
problem getting the students home after that? Paw had a big bus route. I wonder, could they have a special bus route to run those children home again?
Yeah, and you know where I came from in public education, we did have after school busing. Now we had to find some funding to pay for that because they run the regular bus route, but then
Uh-huh.
they'll run a later bus route to take some of those kids back to specific places to be picked up. So yeah, there are always creative ways to find those kinds of things. Yeah.
Right, okay. I hadn't really hadn't thought about that until just now, but that would be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big takeaways that I've always told kids is this notion of when you come to school, when you are, no matter what it is you're doing, if it's sports, if it's music, no matter what it is, if you are prepared to give it your full attention and to give it your very best, don't ever let up, don't ever give up, give it everything you've got it, no matter what you do. And while you're doing that, I think if kids would remember to show kindness no matter where they go and no matter what they do. Those two things, give it everything you've got and be kind. That those are simple things, and I think the world needs to become more simple in that. And there are so many websites out there. If parents are looking for help, how do I raise a child in a single household? There are so
Yeah,
many websites out there. Just search that and to find that, and school violence and that kind of thing. There are so many resources out there to search and to find. And Donna, wouldn't you agree that as teachers we do that every day? Give it everything we have and show kindness.
right, yes. I read about a teacher that had their students write down one good thing they knew about each one of the students in the class, and then she kept those, and at the end of the year, passed them out to the students. And one man, uh, later on in his life, he had kept that in his billfold all the time, the good things that had been said about him, and it helped him through some tough times. And so if we remember to ask the children to think the good things about your classmates and
Yeah,
enjoy being with them, and bring in others that are sitting alone that don't have friends. Be a friend to them too, and be
yeah,
kind. Yes, I really
absolutely.
take that
Yeah,
seat.
that is so well spoken, Donna. That is those are great points. I remember a friend of mine when I first became a principal. He said, "You know what, Steve? Here's what you need to do. Every time somebody writes you a note, a thank you note, or a thank you for doing this, keep a happy folder and keep that in there." And I did that. In 28 years after I retired, I went back and opened that up and started looking through those, and I had so many wonderful notes from people. I shed a few tears and thought, you know what, a career in education, I don't think there's a greater I don't think there's a greater thing that we can do in life, but to help kids and to help educate and to do everything we can to make this world a better place.
We touch lives forever doing that.
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah. Well, Donna, thank you again. It's been wonderful visiting with you, and this has been an absolutely great opportunity for us to connect, and a great thing that these folks are doing to bring people together, and to let some of us old folks who have done it a lot, done it, given a lifetime to education, have an opportunity to talk about it.
Okay, it's been good. Been a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, you take care.
You too. Thank you. Have a good school year.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
Bye bye.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful